Welcome to Gritability, a podcast about the power of perseverance, overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds to attain the life of your dreams. I'm your podcast host, Adam Clausen, and with me is the beautiful and ever radiant Ro Clausen.
Good morning.
Good morning. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about vision, right? If we're talking about attaining the life of your dreams, it's really about what do you see? Like, what does that life look like? Getting very clear on it. And you and I have spent a lot of time, far more time than most, because we had a lot of conversations while sitting in a prison visiting room, looking around, seeing, all the limitations, right? Like literally having bars on the windows in front of us and saying, man, look beyond those bars. What does our life look like? And we had a lot of time to paint that picture.
We did. And what's I think people probably think is the craziest part of that is it was 100% vision. We had no release date. It wasn't like, okay, next year at this time, this is going to happen. It was if and when this ever happens for this episode. This is what it'll look like.
Well, we always believed.
Oh, 100%.
And that's a big part of it, right? So we had this crazy vision of what our life was going to look like on this side. And one of the ways that we designed that, because it evolved over time, right?
Absolutely.
It evolved over time. And right behind you.
Should I grab it?
I don't know if you need to grab it. We can just point to it, spin around and take a look at that. That vision board that sits behind you is really, slide out the way. Oh, I see that picture of you up top. Look at that. There's a picture of us right there in the middle, the get out of jail free card at the bottom. And there's a lot more writing on there that you cannot see. But there's also a description. One of my favorite parts of this board was you wrote me a message and you were describing what our future life looked like. And as far as, because it alluded to our son that we now have. And again, I'm serving 213 years. I'm on the inside. You're serving that sentence with me on the outside, believing that this is all possible, right?
I have no recollection of that email, but yes. And I think what we'll do is we'll take pictures of this front and back and we'll post them on Instagram.
Great idea.
To make it easier to see. Mm-hmm. But do you want to go way back to your, I don't remember what you call it, vision statement. Have you told that part of our story? The list?
The list, I mean, that's actually on my,
it is?
It's on my notes for today. Yeah. But, one of the things that I really did want to talk about today was, we've been very intentional. Making a vision board is one of the ways. It's one of the things, the practices that we had. Well, let me first, while we're talking about the vision board, I had the opportunity to work with hundreds, if not indirectly thousands of men while I was in prison, helping them prepare for their transition home. And I worked with smaller, tighter groups of the coaches, people that I trained to become life coaches, who went through a process, series of courses that we had that were built on self-discovery, introspective analysis, increasing not only self-awareness, self-efficacy, doing the difficult work to figure out who you really are at your core, what's most important to you, and to then begin actively designing, that future life that you envision for yourself. And there was a process that we went through. And with each one of those groups, I had them do a card, right? And on that card, there were two different things. On one side, and I actually have, I'm sure I have it with me. I always carry one of the cards. Yep, I have one right here. On the cards, on every one of these cards, you can see this has made it through some years. And in prison, it's hard to hold on to anything. Like things get taken from you in a shakedown, every time you're searched. So, um, on one side is a God-sized goal. That goal that's just like so big. It's not something you could possibly do by yourself without some assistance from, your higher power, whatever that might be, whatever you believe in. Just knowing that forces bigger than you are going to need to get behind you in order to be able to achieve this dream. And mine was to speak, in this particular instance, was to speak before U.S. Congress about the need for radical criminal justice system reform. Now, about a year ago, I had the opportunity to address the House Judiciary Committee specifically about criminal justice reform, the sentencing reform that allowed me to ultimately win my release. So that was my big goal, and I would say I attained part of that one, but I have a whole stack of these. And on the other side, what I have is a personal inquiry, which is a question that I'd come back to every single day. What have I done to become a better leader and coach and to take another step towards the fulfillment of my vision? Now, I used to keep this in my pocket. It's why it's still in my pocket. And every time I touch this, it's a reminder of my goal, of my vision, and of that inquiry. Hey, what have I done today? And at the end of the day, if I don't have a good answer for that, I'm like, man, I need to do better tomorrow. So that's how I stayed true to following up on that vision. But this was a broad vision, to get clarity on some of those other bigger picture visions, like what we were talking about. That's why it was imperative to sit down and create a vision board, to really put those things, to put visual representations, to put text, to put all these different things that are on this board that remind me and keep me focused on the life that we were building for ourselves.
Do you remember your first vision board in prison before you were able to make this one under the bunk?
Oh, yes. Yeah,
Tell us.
that's a great one. Yeah, my cellmate thought I was absolutely crazy because I got a hold of a marker, indelible marker, and underneath, I'm on the bottom bunk. On the bunk above me, I wrote out an entire passage from The Secret. And then I had all of these pictures all the way around it, including the one with you and the one that we just posted after you won the Miss Fitness New Jersey, and a number of other ones with us together, so that every morning when I woke up, I opened my eyes, that was the first thing that I saw. And every night as I was going to sleep, it was the last thing. So that throughout the night, that's what I was dreaming of. That's what was kept top of mind for me. And I did that very intentionally. I put it in a place that I knew I would constantly see it, be reminded, no matter what else was going on, whatever other distractions, and believe me, there were a lot of distractions in there.
You inspired me, and I was able to inspire so many of my friends to do something very similar. So, what I took from that was I didn't have a bunk, obviously, to write on, but I had a mirror that I looked in every morning. So, I took dry erase or old eyeliner, old lipsticks, and I wrote phrases or affirmations on my mirror. And I inspired my friends to do that because that's something that you're looking in every morning and every night before you go to bed.
Love that.
Yeah.
How come we haven't done that at home?
I don't know. Good question.
We need to do that.
Yeah, we do.
See, note to self. And constantly coming back to these practices, making sure that we're incorporating them. With that vision board, here's the strange thing about this. As I just said, being in prison, you're subjected to constant shakedowns, searches, right? Where they come in and they tear everything up. And they'll spend hours, literally hours, 3-4 people in your cell, pulling everything apart, your sheets, everything in your locker, your cosmetics, your open up your toothpaste, squeeze some toothpaste out to make sure. Because listen, people get creative and they hide stuff in every place you can imagine. But some of these people, I'm gonna point them out. I would say because in the federal system you have your officers, but then you have staff members who work office jobs, maybe administratively up in the front. But when they have mass shakedowns, those people who normally are not on the compound have to come out, put on the gloves, come in the unit after everyone, all of us are removed from the unit, and then they go into the cells and they're instructed to go through everything very carefully. So those individuals that work in those offices always tended, like, those were the people you did not want to end up in your cell because, man, they were just nosy. They were
Ooh.
nosy and they would take their time and they would pick through every little thing. And you'd come back and all your stuff would be missing. And you'd be like, what, what happened?
Could you even imagine? That's like coming home from work and your house was robbed and everything is just all over the place, stuff's missing. Our house probably looks like that this morning after I tried to find something to wear today. But for the average person, just putting yourself in those shoes, that is infuriating.
And listen, you're subjected to that all the time. So that's the reality, knowing that that's going to happen. They're looking for weapons, they're looking for drugs, they're looking for any sort of contraband. And as I said, people get creative. So here's the thing about that vision board. I made that in roughly 2013, 2014. I got out in what year?
2020.
2020. It survived all of those years,
All of those shakedowns,
all of those shakedowns.
which is unheard of, right?
Impossible. Impossible. And that's what I just said. Like certain things, like by divine design, like when you gotta just acknowledge that there are sometimes other forces fully supporting your vision, your dreams, in order for us to be here today. So many different things had to align. But that vision board right there, the fact that I created that in prison under hostile circumstances where there were people who did not appreciate what we were doing on the inside to change the culture, who were openly hostile, knowing that they were looking for any little thing, that right there still somehow survived, made it all the way home, and is now here in the studio with us. Wow.
Yeah.
Like, it's, to me, that's a constant reminder. It's a reminder just of how powerful that vision can be. But that's not the only one. I see you have something.
Well, I was just going to say, when you said about the cellie thinking you're crazy because you wrote under the bunk, and then I'm sure everybody that saw this thought you were crazy. And what's so intriguing to me about this is that everybody that I told our vision to out here or showed my vision board to, they'd be like, okay, you two are crazy. You know, he has a life sentence. We were the crazy people until we believed it into existence and it happened. And now people are basically lined up like, tell us how to do it.
Exactly. And that's what gritability is all about, right? Having the courage to do those things that other people are going to tell you are not possible, that they don't believe, or they're seeing its limitations in their eyes, that when you can fully buy into your vision, there is nothing that can get in your way, nothing that's going to stop you.
But with that said, like I said earlier, I'm like, I have no idea. I don't remember that email that I wrote you back in 20, who knows, whatever. Right. And I think that that's kind of a point. The point is you have your big visions and you put them on there, but we had to reroute our GPS in order to get to our goal. How many different times? You have to put your goal out there, but then let go of how you're going to get there. Take the steps to get there, but you can't be so firm in, I'm going to make it in this direction. We have to do this to get there. How many times did we, why are you laughing?
Because it sounds like you're speaking to me.
I'm not. No, I'm not. Yes, you're
Yes, you
very
are.
much like that.
Yes.
But you've learned throughout the years that you have to let go of that because nobody knew that there would be this little loophole and this avenue that you basically convinced your lawyer was true or worked together.
Well, he was the one that convinced the rest of the world that this was actually a legal means to do it. And then I had to do my part and compile all these lists of extraordinary and compelling circumstances, achievements, things that had never been done before. That each one of those people had told me, had told us, that's never going to happen. You can't, like, the Federal Bureau of Prisons is never going to allow you to bring people in here and do a reentry summit with hundreds of people in a gymnasium. Like, that's a security risk. That's crazy. We did it.
Right. Or back in 2016, when I was crying outside of the White House because clemency never happened, if we said clemency is the only way, I mean, look at the law, clemency is the only way, you would be so laser focused that you would miss the other avenues to get there.
And you make a good point that when you get crystal clear on your vision and understand that how to get there, that's not necessarily the most important. It's just getting clear on what you do want. And sometimes you just have to allow the universe, your higher power, circumstances, to change and move in whatever direction they need to help you get to that point. And I've said this numerous times. One of my greatest strengths is how resolute I can be when I make a decision. I'm like, that's it. I'm in. I'm going. So I'll make a statement to a goal. I'll make it public, and I'm like, whatever happens, I'm going to get that done. Go ahead and bet against me.
And one of my greatest strengths is to help you see that there's not only one way there.
Exactly. And that's where it also it was one of my greatest weaknesses, because in being that resolute on the outcome, I was generally not as flexible as I needed to be. And I am so grateful that you helped me to become much more flexible. I'm still challenged with it. I'm still working on it.
But I think this is where we work well together. And I think that we represent probably the two different types of people when they're doing this, right? Because you can get very laser focused and I can help you see the alternatives. But at the same time, I can be like, okay, this is my goal. Sit back like, okay, somehow it's going to have to happen. And I'm not going to do anything to get there. That's where I think we work really well together.
True. I would definitely say that. So, we always bring this back to our relationship. And I think that this is a great place to talk about when you get very clear on that vision, on what you want, like that's imperative, right? If you don't have a very clear destination, again, if you don't have the right address to plug into a GPS, who knows where you're going to end up? Like, you put in just one wrong number, one wrong word, court instead of street, like, if it's just not right, you might end up on the wrong side of town. So there's a lesson in that, in getting very clear on our vision, constantly refining that over time. I want to go all the way back to a statement, something that I did to get very clear on what I wanted in my life. And this was how I believe you and I ended up together.
Oh, this is the story I talked about in the beginning. Go ahead.
Yes, because although we've shared how we met, we didn't talk about what happened before that. So for me, it was, and as crazy as this sounds, in finding my passion for fitness while in prison in a United States penitentiary, finding a sense of purpose, sharing that passion with others, believe it or not, I found a place of peace. Like, I was at such a good place. I'm out in the yard doing yoga, like, just at peace with myself. I was in a very hostile environment, but I was at peace. I know that's a little bit difficult to comprehend, but that's where I was. And in finding that space, I also had to cut off those relationships that weren't serving me. I cut some people out. And after I did that, I freed up all of that extra space. And I sat back and I said, man, where am I right now in my life? Like, I'm feeling good, health, fitness, all things health and wellness related. Like, if I were to get out tomorrow, because I pictured myself getting out, right? But I was like, well, what does that look like? It's not enough to just define, say, like, this is the destination. I want out. Out to what? To where? To what sort of life? And for me, it was, and still is, it's about relationships first. It's all about the relationships. So if I'm living this way, who are the people on the outside that are going to be my supporters, that are going to be my community? Like, do I have family members who are living this way? How do I reconcile that? Do I have any friends from my past that are living this way? Not really. I'm like, so where do I find this? And I remember, I got a yoga journal, which is generally for women, and guys used to get on me all the time, like, oh, hey, man, let me see some of those girls in that yoga journal. I'm like, dude, I get this for the content. They're like, right. Content. Seriously. So I'm looking through these and I'm seeing these young, fit, healthy women. And I am a young, fit, healthy guy. And I'm going, I've never seen myself in a relationship with someone like this. What does this person look like? Like, what does their life look like? If health and fitness, something that I've found I'm really passionate about, if this is something shared, how are they living? And for me, I said, you know what? Let me take some time and picture that person who's going to be most influential in my life, my life partner, this person that I want to spend my time with, spend the rest of my life with. What is this person like? What does their life look like? What are they interested in? And like, where do we align? So I started writing it down, just freehand as I'm looking through this magazine, everything that came, to mind. And I was very, very intentional not to include aesthetics, because in my past life, I was just extremely shallow. There was no depth. And I wanted this to be more meaningful. I wanted this to really be long term, big picture. So I started writing and I filled up pages. And when I got to a point where I kind of felt like I had, pretty much got everything, all of these characteristics, these attributes, just random thoughts that were kind of related to this person and this lifestyle, I set it up on my locker. And I kept coming back to it and I'd add things to it. And this goes on for a few months. And maybe at some point, I kind of forgot that it was there. I'd look at it and I'd occasionally, okay, but I'm in prison. I'm serving a 213-year sentence. Like, what relevance does this have at the moment? I'm like, okay, time to get focused on, maybe I should think about how I'm going to get out of here, right? Then I can focus on the relationships. But it was there. I knew that it was a key component. So I was blindsided when this guy comes to me and says, hey, I'd like to connect you, hook you up with my girlfriend's cousin. And we shared that whole story. Going into that, I wasn't thinking about the time that I had taken to write out my ideal partner and all of those attributes. So it wasn't until you and I began communicating via email, and we're maybe a couple weeks into it at this point, and I'm like, wow, like this is eerie. Like she's into everything that I'm into, and like we're so on the same page. And I go back to my cell, and for whatever reason, I see the pages up there on top of my locker, and I grab it and I start looking through it, and I'm like, oh my God. I was like, this is crazy. I was like, she's everything that I put on this list. How is that possible? Like it shouldn't, that it shouldn't even be possible. But I specifically listed all of the things that were most important to me. And these were the things that I was hearing from you in each one of these emails. And at that point, I'm like, wait a minute. There's something to this. Like I literally attracted exactly what I wanted.
So I've been there, right? I remember this was years and years ago, and it was before I even knew what any of this stuff was. And I was sitting at my desk at work one day, and I was just in such a like soul sucking position, and I'm like, I want more. So I took out a little piece of paper, and I drew like almost like emoji. I mean, I can't draw, but that type of thing, right? And I drew all these little emoji type things on this piece of paper, and I folded it up and I put it in my wallet. Totally forgot it was there, and I found it in my wallet years later, and I was looking through it. I'm like, oh my god, that I got that. It was crazy. And it reminds me of this exercise that I learned years later where you write down all of your goals on a piece of paper. You could do it two ways. You could do it in pencil. You write them all down. You kind of focus on it, you get a feel for it, and then you erase it. Or this is like a little more fun if you're a little crazy. You take that piece of paper, you crumple it up, and you go outside, you go someplace safe, and you light it on fire. And it symbolizes this is what I want. I know what I want. I'm putting it out there, but I'm detaching from it. Exactly what you just said about your vision. I don't know what you called it. Your
Attraction statement.
Your attraction statement.
Well, yeah, I've done so many different exercises with groups utilizing this, but the biggest thing is you got to believe in it, right? You have to put that energy behind it. And after having this experience, knowing the value of it, like there were times where we became very intentional. You know, the group of men that I got the opportunity to work with on an ongoing basis for a good part of a decade, where we started employing many of these practices. Like I credit that with getting clear, very clear on what I envisioned. And the more clarity I had, the more that these things began to happen. The seemingly impossible suddenly became possible. And with each new accomplishment, like the confidence that I gained, man, at that point, you know, there was just so much. It was almost like gaining momentum, right? Like once things get rolling, it's just more and more and more. And I think that's where you and I gained the confidence that even this crazy vision that we were going to have this life together, despite the sentence, despite all of the challenges against us. It was by building up those wins, by seeing things come to fruition. That's what gave us the confidence. That's what inspired us to keep pushing through. Even when we hit those walls where all of a sudden, like when you were out front of the White House and that didn't work out, I didn't get clemency. It wasn't like, oh my God, everything's done, it's over. Believe me, that was devastating. It was a very difficult time. But we didn't lose sight since we were so clear on our vision. It was an opportunity for us to step back, to pivot, to keep moving forward. And although it took us a couple more years, like we got it, we did it.
And I think the trick, as hard as this was in the moment, and it still is moving forward, when you have such a disappointment, you have to kind of grasp for that silver lining and find what you're grateful for in the moment. So I remember like in that despair feeling, I'd be like, okay, we're still together. He's not dead. You know, he's not in solitary confinement. I'm not leaving him at this point. So I'm grateful for all of this stuff. And then you get into the attitude of, okay, I got this. I could do this. I implemented this little, I don't want to say rule. We called it a rule, but it's not really a rule. Follow it if you want. But practice through Strong Prison Wives and Families, where when we felt that despair, something bad happened, we gave ourselves 24 hours. We called it the 24-hour rule, where you got 24 hours to wallow. If you want to call out of work, if you want to lay in bed, watch Netflix, eat Cheetos, whatever your thing is, for 24 hours, do it. Feel those feelings. Don't allow them to just like, don't push them down and ignore them. Oh, I have to stay strong. It's not going to work because eventually they're going to bubble out, right? You can only push the trash down and down and down before it comes over. Give yourself 24 hours and then pick yourself up and decide, okay, how am I going to move forward? And I think we became so good at that, and we developed a practice while you were in prison we did over email that we still do to this day every single night, where we ask ourselves, we ask one another, What are you grateful for? What are you most grateful for today?
And I love that practice. That started out on the inside. That was a big part of our communication, right? And getting clear on, um, because our gratitude was one part, being grateful in the moment, making sure that we were in the positive mindset. But then it was also that part. What are you most looking forward to tomorrow?
Yep.
And although that we've refined this since, um, man, it's so much more meaningful to be able to do these exchanges. Listen, it was great via email, and we did that for years. But just to put this in context, there's a 2 hour delay on those emails. So I would write mine, send them off, and go into my cell and go to bed for the night. And it wasn't until I got up in the morning and I would be on the door, like when they pop the doors in the morning, and I would take off and get to the email because there's only so many stations. And my goal was to be the first one there so that I got to one, got a chance to log on, and I would read yours from the day before. And to me, that was like, that was such a positive way for me to start the day. I would, start out inspired. You fortunately would get my email, that night. Mine was always just a little bit delayed, but it was through that practice of constantly reinforcing where we are right now and being reminded of where we are going, having that clear vision for the future. That's what allowed us to continuously make progress, to not be deterred, when things happened, and it doesn't, this wasn't unique to us being our relationship, us, having that physical separation. We just had more challenges than most because of the circumstances. But life out here is just as challenging.
If not more, because we have to face day to day challenges. I mean, even minor ones that, you know, not you because you never do this, but like, oh, he didn't take the garbage out. He left his socks on the floor, that type of a thing. There's more things in the moment that you can kind of get annoyed by,
Which is why gratitude is so important.
of course. And we still tweak it to this day. We just added one a couple months ago. The thing I appreciate the most about you today and every day is, and it just helps us in our relationship because I think a lot of times people do take for granted and they don't appreciate all of the good qualities about their partner because it's easier to see the negative or get annoyed in those small moments.
So true. It is definitely both of these about, whether we're talking vision or gratitude, it's about being very, very intentional and getting clear on that. Um, you know, most people are just going to coast. They're going to cruise through life. And at some point, disappointment hits and they say, you know what? There were all of these other things that I wanted to do, wanted to have, experiences, relationships. Man, I just didn't get them. Maybe I'm unlucky, or, they look outside of themselves, where we're of the mindset, and this is what we've practiced, talking about gritability. Like, we honestly believe that we can have everything that we envision for ourselves by simply being consistent, by doing the hard work, doing those difficult things every single day. And ultimately, like, we've had those successes. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful that we've had those because it's reinforced it. And I would just encourage others, like, who haven't had that success yet, like, don't stop. Don't quit. Whatever you do, just keep pushing. And eventually you are going to break through.
I think the takeaway for me from that is you have to ask yourself, is this something that I genuinely want? Will I genuinely be happy when I get there? And have I changed my mind? Maybe you don't want it anymore. Maybe somebody else is telling you that you want it. That for me is the key. Once I decide, yes, this is exactly what I want in my future, that's when I get laser focused.
Mm. And I'm going to add one more thing as we wrap this up. When we're talking about a vision, um, again, we're in an Instagram, TikTok age where you see a lot of flash, right? Like, it's cool to want things, That's great. Like the cars, the homes, like physical material things are one part of it. But when we're talking about really envisioning the life of your dreams, I want you to think about all aspects of it, not just the things. It's cool to include those things, but okay, after those things, because it's got to be more than that. It's got to be the relationships, the experiences, like what happens at that point? What does your life look like? Because ultimately, we're all seeking an experience, a feeling, an emotion that's attached to that. And the physical things might inspire something in the moment, but they get old. It's got to be about more than that.
100%.
So that's our vision board. We're going to have to update that thing.
I was just going to say the same thing. Like, I feel like I want to go home and make a vision board tonight. We haven't done one in a while.
It's about time for us to update our vision board and to start putting some things on the bathroom mirror. So I have a feeling maybe tomorrow when I walk into that bathroom, there might be something on the mirror. We'll see what that looks like. Maybe that's a practice for both of us. Maybe we figure out something together that we can put on that mirror, because it's imperative. Like, you got to keep it top of mind. And we still have so much more that we want to do, that we want to accomplish. And we got to keep putting these things into practice, right? Can't just talk about it.
Yep.
So this has been another great conversation, great episode with my co-host, Ro Clausen. I'm your podcast host, Adam Clausen, and this is Gritability. We'll see you back here on the next episode.